X-Men Origins Wolverine is directed by Gavin Hood and stars Hugh Jackman, Liev Schreiber, Ryan Reynolds, and Taylor Kitsch. And this movie tells the origin story of Wolverine, how he became Weapon X, and his relationship with Victor Creed. Now, let me say this. This movie gets an awful lot of hate. I'm talking, people hate this movie, bash it to a pulp, and people call it like one of the worst superhero movies of all time. Now, let me say this. This movie's not great. Obviously, it's not great. But I would not call it one of the worst superhero movies out there. I mean, I've seen a lot of superhero movies, and there are obviously ones that are way worse. Now, let me say this. This movie definitely has flaws. Like, let me just say my flaws right now. The actress who plays Kayla Silverfox is terrible in this movie. Some of her dialogue was pretty cringeworthy. Some of the CGI, I know a lot of people like to say, oh, the CGI on Wolverine's claws look awful, and I will agree, the CGI on his claws were pretty bad. And of course, the Deadpool. The Deadpool at the end of the movie was absolutely horrendous. I mean, when I first saw this movie, let me mention this. When I first saw this movie, I was young, so at that time I didn't make a huge deal, but now that I know what he's supposed to be like, that is one of the worst representations of a comic book character I have ever seen. And some of this CGI, as I said, is like, you know, really bad, and like obviously the tone sometimes jumps around way too much. Like there's so many stuff happening. Now let's get into the other actors in this movie. Hugh Jackman is obviously great as Wolverine, and I think he's the #1 best thing about this movie. In fact, no, he is. Liev Schreiber is good as Sabretooth. Now, let me just say this. Even though this movie is nowhere near as good as, I'd say, the first 2 X-Men, I don't know about X-Men 3, but one thing I'd say this movie does better than the first X-Men is Sabretooth. Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth I thought was much better than Tyler Mane Sabretooth. Because Liev Schreiber Sabretooth has more personality, and he feels like an actual character. Whereas Tyler Mane Sabretooth just felt more like a beast with no personality. Liev Schreiber was very good in this movie. In fact, the dynamic between Wolverine and Sabretooth was really good. And the score was really good. Some of the action was really good. As for the other performances, Danny Houston as Stryker was fine in the movie, but he wasn't great. Taylor Kitsch as Gambit. Now, I will say, even though Gambit was kind of shoehorned into this movie, I actually thought Taylor Kitsch was okay. I thought he was good. I mean, yeah, he was kind of underused and barely in the movie, and he was just kind of there. But I thought he was pretty good. And yeah, X-Men Origins Wolverine, let me just say this. This isn't a great movie, but it's not a horrible movie either. And I know this is going to sound kind of insane, but I'm going to give X-Men Origins Wolverine a B.